Critical Blast, where pop culture gets blasted.
And good evening, everybody. I am RJ Carter, Senior Managing Editor here at criticalblast.com. And we are so happy that you've decided to join us here once again as we look at crowdfunded comics. Tonight, our special guest is Randy Zim from Revolt, and they are putting out an anthology sort of book called the Revolt.
Hey,
Randy, welcome to the stream, man.
Thanks for having me on, man.
Glad to do it. Love the look of your book here. I'm going to bring the page up here in a little bit, but
thank you.
Want to learn a little bit about you and what you're doing in comics first before we move into that.
That's a question I used to ask myself all the time.
Yeah, what am I doing in comics?
Yeah, what am I doing in comics? Hey, everybody out there. I am really Randy Zimmerman. I go by Randy Zim or Zim. I sign a lot of work by the name Zim. And I've been doing comics for, over 30 years or so. My first story was published in the back of William Mesner Loeb's Journey, number 11. Oh, it's a great book. Bill's awesome. And I got involved with Arrow Comics back in the mid 80s, did Tales from the Aniverse along with Susan Van Camp. And after that, I was freelancing and self-publishing any place I could. So I've done a lot of stuff and done just about everything in the direct market that you can imagine, retailed for a good decade, coordinated conventions for a good decade. I got out after the third run of Arrow Comics back in 2003. We did a lot of products that went through the direct market, or tried to at least. Diamond was kind of holding us back a little bit, and I got out and had my own apparel business for a few years. And then, of course, when you do comics, it gets into your blood and you can't stop.
Siren call.
Yes, pretty much. We say it gets into your blood. The first minute you pick up your first book and you smell that great printing ink, you decide then and there if you're going to do this for the rest of your life, whether you want to admit it to yourself or not. And that's what happened. So for 10 years there, from 2009 to about 2019, I did my own newspaper, my own local comics and entertainment paper called Flint Comics and Stories, or Flint Comics and Entertainment.
Sweet.
We did it once a month. It was advertiser supported, folded out like a regular newspaper, and had all sorts of comics and stuff inside, some syndicated stuff, some comic book stuff, single panel work, as much local work as I could get my hands on that we thought was quality. We figured ourselves as Flint's favorite bathroom reader there for about 10 years. Moved 10,000 copies through my county. And then the Flint water crisis hit back in 2014. Everybody's heard about that. If you haven't been watching the news, and the mom and pop advertising just disappeared because everybody fell on hard times economically up here, especially in the immediate Flint area.
I don't think that's been fixed either. It just
Pardon?
kind of quit getting talked about.
Yeah, it hasn't. It's slowly been getting fixed still. And they're just now getting around to indicting people, because the real tragedy wasn't the fact that there was lead in the pipes. The real tragedy was that the state government just totally ignored it for a long period of time.
Yeah,
it took one person, the child doctor up at the big local hospital right in the middle of the problem, to step up and say, hey, you're really letting these kids real hard, and the lead levels were way up in anybody that was drinking the water. And in the meantime, they were like going, no, just run your pipes, it'll be fine. And then there's a whole paper trail or all trail really back to that goes all the way up to the governor's office, and that's who they're going after now. So,
well, these things, there's a cost threshold that has to be crossed. Enough people have to die to make it worth their time to fix it.
Well, that's a tragic sheer tragedy, but they had a lot of people. There was a lot of local news here of people doing city council meetings with orange water in milk jugs and going, this is coming out of my faucet, you need to do something. And then it became a pick and choose kind of thing. Some of the lines were good, some of them weren't good. We started picking up Detroit water again. They had an additive in it that lined the pipes, and some of those were good and some of those weren't good, and they're still going through and changing water lines to this day. So
Well,
But anyway, that went, and it went south. I kept it alive for 100 issues. We moved through 1 million copies right here in our little county. And
yeah.
we had a whole run of red boxes, newspaper boxes, and places. Any place that you walked into, you get a free paper at any of the convenience stores or the restaurants that you walk in. You pick up a real estate digest or health and wellness freebie magazine. You pick up a funny book paper for nothing, and it was a lot of fun to do. And I would have kept doing it, to tell you the truth, but the advertising dollars just dried up, and then it was really hitting my savings, so I had to stop. So
yeah, if you're not making money at it, or at least self-supporting, then you can't keep it up.
Yeah, love doing it though, and it really reinstilled my love for comics and for sequential art. So when we were talking about stopping it, and the wife was telling me it was really getting too expensive and the savings were starting to get hit, at that point I was talking to Varian Grant, and he was doing the Indie Volt Media network set up with the internet radio, and we got to talking about doing the podcasts, and I did a lot of research on YouTube and started looking at crowdfunding, and it's been rolling ever since with Indie Volt, the Indie Volt Media Group.
Yeah, crowdfunding's been a huge revolution in the comics industry. I mean, it's hitting every area of the arts and entertainment and creativity, but comics for sure is just people who were not able to get past editors before are going straight to the consumer and saying, "This is what I've got. Do you want to buy it? You can get it from me."
Well, it's a direct outlet to your audience, is what it is. And it allows them to buy in and to really become part of it. And then you add on top of that the internet and YouTube and podcasting, like what we're doing. And folks really get to know you, and they want to see the stuff that you do.
Yes.
And we started the Indie Volt podcast back 2 years ago. It was 2 years on the 12th of this month. And we had grown. We had grown from Varian and myself talking in a dark corner, pretty much. If you see the early films, and they're all still up there. That's the thing about YouTube. When you archive your stuff, you're there forever until you decide you have to take it down. But it started out as two guys who loved comics that were talking about comics, and we figured out eventually StreamYard, the social software, and we started adding guests and more guests and more guests, and pretty soon we became like a family. And then there were so many people we started attracting because of the internet radio. We started getting people from all over the world, and the internet radio numbers are crazy, absolutely crazy. Give me just a second here.
I just found your channel link, subscribe to it, and I'm pushing it out to the chat now and telling everybody they should do the same.
We went from just being on for a couple hours on Tuesday to being on a couple hours on Thursday, because we found that there were people on the other side of the globe that were listening to us that would stay up late for them at night or early in the morning. But it's the middle of the afternoon if we come on at 9 a.m. So we started the Breakfast Buzz on Thursday. And then since then, we've grown a couple of other shows. And now I do a show myself on Sunday mornings called the Sunday Funnies. And that goes back to the Flint comic stuff again, where we were doing comic strips and the more lighthearted, funny paper kind of things, where we try to keep it light, and we try to talk about the more lighthearted and whimsical side of comics. So, yeah.
Now, so were these all original, or were you syndicating some of the older scripts that, have been seen all over the country?
This was like literally, it was like a mixtape of just comic love. That's the way we started to look at it. But I had columns in there as well. We found a stand-up comedian that did a regular column for a while, and he ended up leaving, and we found another comedian that Mark Bontos, the guy's name, who would do a regular column for us every month. We had an Average Joe that did a column. We did a People in Your Neighborhood column. But between that, we used syndicated strips, local strips. I used comic book stories. I ran through my backlog of short stories that were family friendly really fast when we started doing this. And so I was always struggling to find stories. I even went out and found old public domain stories. Loved to print the old Liv Gleason material, the old superhero stuff every July. Like there was I think there was at least one July there, we ran an old Uncle Sam story.
Nice.
Just for the fun of it, and we got a lot of response. And after a while, it took a few months to build up, But after a while, it really looked like we were going to do real well with this. And then the water crisis happened and things went real shaky. And some of our advertisers that we had ever since the start and couldn't, keep up with the contracts. And, we were pulling in less and less income off of it. So.
Sure. You kind of went through a microcosm version early on of what the entire country went through with COVID, hitting all the businesses and shutting things down.
Yes, to an extent. We had a lot of businesses that were outside of the water zone that had to post papers as you walked in saying we have safe water or our water lines are safe, and all sorts of scary stuff like that. There was a lot of paranoia, a lot of crazy news going around over who was tainted and who wasn't, and it got to be really crazy. But yeah, our economy really got assaulted by it. Yeah.
So you eventually did get around to doing this Revolt series here, and this looks like a double book.
Oh, that's a flip book. Yeah. What started, like I said, with Volt, we started gaining a family. We started having folks from England, from the Netherlands, from Portugal that came in, and we would have them on the show and we would talk about art and the comics that they love and all of that. And then I got to a point where I was telling Varian, people know who we are, but they're not familiar with what we do. There's been not a whole lot of people outside of the Flint, Michigan area had seen the Flint Comics and Entertainment paper, even though I had been in comics forever. And there's a lot of great folks that are in comics that recognize the name Arrow Comics, and they remember Tales from the Aniverse. And I love each and every one of them. That some folks knew what we do. Like I've had a book with Caliber for years called War of the Worlds Infestation that's available on Amazon, but nobody knows that. I've had people walk up in the business and go, "You wrote that book?" And then you go, "Yeah, here, look, Randy Zimmerman right there. I was listed in Overstreet, says Randy Zimmerman scripts begin right there under War of the Worlds. That's me."
Nice. I didn't even know Caliber was still printing.
And you see, we're getting a lot of that too. People who don't realize that these alternative companies that they thought were out there are still out there.
See, today is Wednesday, and I get my paycheck, and then I got my what they're calling your Biden bucks. Got those hit on the same day, so it was DCBD for me, which stands for Dollar Comic Book Day. I don't get much of the new stuff anymore, but I hit the dollar one hard. And whenever I'm looking, it's like I'm going back to the stuff that was coming out when I was in college.
Yep.
Stuff that you just don't hear of anymore.
Oh, Lethargic Lad. It's been a long time since I thought about that. Heck yeah. Yeah. X-Mutants. Yeah.
X-Mutants. Had Henry Vogel on the show a couple of months back here with his X-Thieves, trying to get him to take his Southern Nights into an anthology. Mike Barron's on a lot, so we found some Badger.
Yeah, we've had Mike Barron on our show before. Yeah.
He's a fun guy. He'll always come on.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to read this. I always saw the ads for it, never saw the book. So this is Neil Adams' Toy Boy.
Yeah, Toy Boy. Sure.
Concrete.
Yep. Will Chadwick.
Justice Machine.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
E-Man and Novocaine.
Joe Staten. I'm a big fan of his work.
Yeah. Mike Grell. We had him on the show before Christmas.
Yep. Grell, too.
Mark Evanier and Dan Spiegel's Crossfire. I am set for the night.
There you go. Yeah.
But yeah, I love the 80s independent stuff. And I tell a lot of people, Randy, when I grew up, there was no comic shop around. I mean, well, it was the 70s, so there was no direct market. But I mean, the drugstore didn't sell them.
You're right. Sure.
But I had the advantage of growing up in Sparta, Illinois.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Sparta.
Yeah. So, you're right there where the presses were. Exactly.
And everybody who worked there just brought print overruns home. So you know somebody who worked there, you had comics.
Yeah.
And it was like 1980 or early 80s. I've got all my my Teen Titans and my X-Men because I'm DC, Marvel, Richie Rich and Archie. That was all there was. That was the world.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, I get this stack from a guy who works there, and I'm like going, DC, okay, I got to read these. Oh, new detective, American Flag. I'm 14, okay?
Oh, so yeah, that's a great book for a 14-year-old to find.
It was. Bourgeois.
There you go.
And then it's like PC who's PC Comics? Ms. Mystic. Now I didn't get anything like, Omaha the Cat Dancer. That was when I was in college. But still, it was Red Circle was doing
yeah.
serious superhero stuff at the time.
Yep.
So they had The Fly. It was all the reprint stuff.
Mighty Crusaders. Oh yeah.
Yeah, and it was like I saw suddenly I loved the independence because it was like I still loved my DC and my Marvel, but this was fresh. This was like discovering a new flavor of jelly.
Yeah.
So, and now it's like, I think you hear a lot of talk about, oh, the industry's dying, the industry. No, but it's just a new renaissance. The old is maybe, not as tasty as it used to be.
Well, it's so fascinating to sit there and listen to people's perspectives because you only see where you're at your point.
Yeah.
So if you're not out there looking for this stuff, you're never going to find it. Like, here, for example, Only Death Can Save Us, which is an amazing book by Russ Leach, just incredible book.
Had him on the show.
Yeah. Oh, Russ is amazing. And I would have never have known about Russ or his books if we hadn't been doing the podcast. We stumbled across Russ. And then the first minute you look at the campaign, you're like going, oh, I'm in. That's it.
Yeah.
And there's so many of those campaigns out there. And so I admit I haven't seen all of them. There's so many of them out there. And there's so many of them that are so professional. You sit there and you go, oh, whoop. When we have them on the show, I'm sitting here writing down a name. Oh, I got to invest in that one. Here we go.
I spent a lot of money.
Yeah. I have spent more money the last 2 years on comics than I have in the last 20. And I'm not exaggerating. No, none of it in the mainstream.
And I look at some of these people and I'm like, why are they doing independent? Why have they not been snapped up by, a DC or Marvel? Because goodness knows some of the art quality that's coming out of these, the big houses is not what we grew up with in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. They've, I don't want to say they've cheaped out on it, but they've gone to a style that just doesn't have the appeal anymore.
Well, in all actuality, they've honestly cheaped out on us. That's what they've done. They go for a lower common denominator because they go with what they can easily afford or the buddies of the people that are up there in the offices. And it gets really irritating because there's so many, even the guys that we grew up on are still more than capable of doing work that are just looked over for any of these regular gigs. And it just just about everybody that you brought up there that's still alive. Joe Staten went on to do Dick Tracy.
Yeah, I'm trying to get Steve Warren on the show. I've been emailing him today.
Okay.
He did The Survivors, and his style was. I picked up that in a dollar bin last week, and I'm like, this is gorgeous. Where is this guy? Where'd he go? Oh, he's still around. So let's, we're going to try and talk to him.
Not just around, but real willing to do work. And that's the cool thing about doing this stuff. There's really no retirement age. If you go and you look at Kirby's career, he was 50? He was 41, 51 when he created the Fantastic Four. And then 10 years later, he did the New Gods. And his stuff just kept getting crazier and crazier with imagination after that until, right up to the point where he passed or he was too old to hold a pencil. So when you see there's a lot of guys out there that I don't ever plan on retiring. I'm just going to keep going. So
we have Indycron in the chat wants to know why your book isn't on Indycron, Randy.
That's a good question. That's a really good question.
Since Indycron, since you are Indycron, how can you get it up there?
That's Pixel Trader's book, isn't it? Or site. Honestly, it's because I've been busy doing stuff and I haven't really gotten around to getting out there the way that I want to. In fact, here Critical Blast is really the first outside podcast that we've done that wasn't, an Indie Volt podcast where we're talking about this product. So there's Russ right there, comic book black belt. So
that's going to change, Randy, because a lot of people are sitting here, what was it?
I'm sorry, it's not intentional neglect. It's because I've been busy to get stuff up there. Yeah.
But you're bringing an education here that,
Yeah, and again, that was part of the fun of doing the pod. I'm sure you're running into that too, where it's fun doing the podcast to tell folks about this stuff because it's what we love. It's our passion. It's what it's what we cut our teeth on. Well, like you said, you had a whole list of stuff. You're going to be in nostalgia heaven tonight, going through all the books that you bought.
I absolutely will be.
It's all it's like that for us. And that's something we push on our show too. We always tell folks, go out there and visit your retailer because they're hurting probably worse than most of the mom and pop stores are hurting now. Your retailer is hurting especially hard, and they've got all of these boxes, usually close to the floor, one level up from the floor, that have been gathering dust, that have been sitting there that maybe he hasn't looked at in a few years. The retailer himself hasn't gone through in a few years. All old prices, folks. Look at these deals. Like you said, you hit that dollar bin. Yeah. And it's not even looking for value at this point. It's looking for great entertainment.
Yeah.
That's the cool thing. That's another reason why I did this book is all of the stories that we're running in Revolt are beginning, middle, and end stories. They're stories. They're not like little previews or like, hey, I've got a book that's coming out. There are characters there where you can go on and read more about the characters. There's a lot of IPs in the book, which is really cool, but it's really a showcase. That's why if you look at the campaign, it's a sequential art collection. It's not an anthology book. It's not a collection of guys just sitting there going, you know, it'd be cool. Let's draw this. It's a group of the people that were on the Indie Volt podcast that all got together and sent in their stories. So their stories that they want people to read that we've put together into a book.
So you're kind of like a comic writer's workshop.
You know, a lot of these guys are like Russ and that have been around, Daphne Lage and JD Calderon. They've been doing Tall Tales and Oswald Chronicles for a long period of time. It's not really a workshop. It's more of a display of what these guys are capable and girls are capable of doing. You know, it's a showcase. It's like a portfolio book more than a workshop.
Gotcha. Well, you got a video attached to this campaign here.
I have two. Thanks to Russ Leach, I have two, because the first one I did was 4 minutes long because I explained who Indie Volt was and what a flip book was and what Arrow Comics was. And then Russ said, that's way too long. You need to cut that down to 30 seconds. And even with the way I like to talk, I was barely able to keep it under a minute.
Well, we'll play the second one here then, assuming that the second one is the
second one's the long one. Just so you know, the first one's a shorter one. You probably want to play that one.
This one's the short. We'll go with the short one.
Let
me give that full screen and full attention.
All right, thank you. Over 110 great pages of black and white comics, over 15 complete stories performed by over 24 creators, all contributors or listeners to the Indie Volt podcast. A square-bound graphic novel-sized book wrapped around 2 different front covers. This is a flip book with 2 different cover set options for you to choose from, all performed by a wide variety of talent from a wide variety of countries, all wanting to show you their potential and the power of what alternative and independent comics can have. And that's just the start. Stretch goals will add more stories to this book, making it literally as big as the backers can possibly make it, and heralding the return of Arrow Comics back to regular publishing greatness. This is not the time for alternative and independent comics to stand still. This is time to revolt. This is Indie Volt Revolt. It's yours today.
Okay. I am guilty of not having read the campaign, which is typical because this is a fly by the seat of your pants sort of outfit here when I run these things.
Sure.
So I saw Flip Book. I'm like, okay, you got 2 stories. You got this one. You have 15 stories in this and growing. And it's
over and growing. Yes. Yeah. We are 5 backers away because I lowered our stretch goals because Mark Darden is also a friend of the program. He does a comedy superhero book called Guano Guy. And we don't have any superhero material. Yeah, we don't have any superhero material in the book until Guano Guy gets in there. So 5 more backers. It's a great story from Mark Darden that is about Guano Guy that'll be in the book. I'm sure we're going to make it because we're at 20 now already, and we've only been up for 2 days. So I can't wait for that. That's going to turn the book into over 120 pages.
Oh, you're going to make it, and I'll tell you why you're going to make it because I'm taking care of that right now.
Oh, there you go. Thank you.
So, folks, follow along with me here. Do you need a tutorial on how to sign up for these things? Because I'll gladly put my thing up here. Because I don't care if I get my credit card.
Yeah, you might want to care. Yeah, you don't want that.
Care a little bit. But
It's
yeah,
really
let's,
simple though, and everybody out there asks me why didn't you go with Kickstarter? Because Kickstarter is really the place. Once you do your research and you see, you'll decide there are pluses and minuses for both platforms. And Indiegogo worked for me because, quite frankly, if we get 5 more backers or 20 more backers, it doesn't matter. We're going to print this book. And we want to print it as thick as we can make it. We want to have as many readers as we can possibly have on it. But we were able to get a flexible goal with this, which means that we're gonna take however many come in, and that's however many we're going to print with a few extra, because I want all of the talent to have one, obviously, that have worked on this book. Over 24 folks have worked on this book. There's Luke Stone too. He's one of the stretch goals that'll be coming up. And hopefully, if we get enough backers, we're going to get a story in there by Luke Stone.
That would be very cool. Yeah, and I do too like the fact that the stretch goals are tied to the number of backers, because
I'm hoping that spine on that book gets thicker and thicker all the time. So that's the one part of the print file. Yeah.
We want a Western Shonen Jump.
That's exactly right. And that would be so cool to do. Only instead of if you see a Shonen Jump, they're all continued stories in there. These are all self-contained stories. You don't have to have read anything about the characters beforehand. All you have to do is sit there and just enjoy the story and learn about the character at the same time.
All right. Well, we're at 22 backers now at $915.
Oh, thank you, everybody.
Get close to that $1,250.
Yep.
Jump in on this one, guys. Indycon, I don't know who Critical Snail is, but I want him as a mascot. I want to put the Critical Blast logo on the little Nautilus shell. Let's make that happen if we can.
There you go. Yeah, we have to get on Indycron. I am so behind the 8 ball on this. That's why I'm doing it as a 60-day campaign so that I can catch up to everybody and try to get the word out to as many folks as possible. Because it's really not a it is generating money, but it's generating money for the people that are also in the book. Anything that's profit on this title, we're going to take down the amount of comic pages that are in the book, split it up by that number of the profit, and return that right back to the creators. That's awesome. I've got a couple stories in it myself already, and they're short. They're really short. They're almost like hole fillers in order to try to even out both sides, so that when you go in one way now, I'm sure, since we're like 3 backers away from 25, you're going to go in 60 pages on one side, then 60 pages on the other side.
Excellent.
At least. And that's if we don't meet any of the other, stretch goals.
I would love to get in on something like that, Randy, but I am not a comic book writer. I'm a book writer. You see the Destroyer back here, Remo Williams. That's the book that I'm currently writing on.
Are you? That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
I bet.
But I can't draw worth a lick, so I can't do comics.
Oh, no. You shouldn't even think that. You go out and you find yourself an artist.
Well, yeah, but
there's a lot of my style. Go ahead.
They want money.
They do. And that's only fair because they want to eat.
I agree.
But there are my style tends to be really cartoony. So whenever I do a more serious book, or if I find like right now on Facebook, I was boasting that I saw a cover by an artist this morning for a title that I'm working on. That's a really hardcore fantasy book. Well, not hardcore, but it's a very fantasy book that I felt when I saw this artist come up, and I was talking to him about projects to work on, and he hit on that idea. Ever since then, it's all been synergy. Every time I send him a rough for a character drawing, he sends back something that's twice as good. And he sent me a rough for the cover this morning, and I'm like, oh, yes, right there. That's it. Perfect. Yeah.
Randy, we got to get you on our every other Saturday night. We do a show called the LCS Guys. We've been having guest stars on every time now. It started when COVID hit, and I wanted to check in on the people running stores and see how they're doing.
Yeah.
So we still have Yule Carter from Fantastic Comics in Sacramento.
Mm-hmm.
I say Sacramento? Berkeley.
Okay.
We had Michael Tierney, who was running the comic book store in Little Rock. Dave Dyer,
has he been doing that for a while? That Tooney? That sounds familiar.
Michael Tierney.
Tierney. Okay.
Yeah, he's been an Overstreet contributor for years.
All right. Yeah.
And Dave Dyer at Cosmic Comics in Belleville, Illinois, and it was all different because it was like California was all shut down. Ewell couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
Dave was selling them out the back door of the comic shop like, heroin.
Yeah.
And Michael was like, Arkansas didn't shut anything down. We had one case in the entire state, so there was no need. But Diamond shut down, so he had an open store paying rent on with no inventory coming in.
Yep.
He eventually had to shut both of his stores down. He went mail order only, working out of his home.
Wow. Yeah.
But,
is he back open now, I hope?
No.
Oh.
He said it was, the sort of like the perfect confluence of things to happen to say, this would be the time to shut down if I'm going to do it. I mean, he's doing all right. He's writing his own comics too, and
okay.
He's a politician in his town, so he's got stuff going on.
He's probably pretty busy.
He's very busy.
Oh,
but just talking about the industry every 2 weeks, and bringing in experts, and they give the front line thing, because according to the comic book industry, they are the customer.
That happened as soon as the direct market sprung up. That was even before Diamond became the main dog in the industry.
Yeah,
but folks figured out why that was, and sadly, it really constrained the market, because it turned it into somebody out there, whoever did a demographic study that narrowed down who the buying public for comics was, 25 to 55, mostly white, mostly male. And that's all that they've wanted to aim for years. And it's been irritating. So, because I love the wide spectrum of comics, because I grew up in the early 70s, mid 70s, just as the undergrounds were rolling. So that was a real fascination for me, was the underground set, then the indie comic set, then the alternative set. And that's why I love doing a wide spectrum of comics to this day.
Well, speaking of a wide spectrum, I saw a lot of pages of really good art go by here. And I was wondering if you could just kind of speak to some of the stories. By the way, you are now at 23 backers, $925. We need 2 more backers.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you.
Going.
Yep. 2 more and Mark's in for sure. Yeah. I might sneak him in anyway, but it's a good story. So
yeah.
But yeah, if once we hit that 25 mark, and then I think our next mark is 50, and eventually if we hit 150 backers,
you're going to be in almost a hardcover. You'll be a serious catalog of comics.
Oh, well, hopefully we'll be a catalog. I don't think we're going to go to the hardcover part of it, but at 150, I believe, or 200 backers, there's going to be a story in there that the indie princess who runs our Wednesday night show, who's Varian's wife, is going to write, and Varian's supposed to do the artwork on it. And he's promised me he's going to do a story for the book if we get that many backers. And we want to see that happen.
Yes,
it needs to be I think this book needs to be a true representation of all of the people that have been working very hard on IndieVolt the last couple of years. And Varian has been right at the center of that. So
you get to kind of be editor as well here. I mean, you're dealing with other people's property that they're sending in. And,
I'm the one that gets to drool over the story that when it gets turned in. You think this is good enough? Yeah, this is great.
Yeah, editing's a lot more fun than writing, because it's like, you're slaving. You're editing. It's like you either like it or you don't. And if you like it, then you're happy.
And if you go through the artwork on the book, like you were saying, there's funny animals, there's science fiction, there's giant robots, there's large bees and bugs. There's it's crazy the amount of the variety that we have, except that, again, until Mark's story gets in there, there's no superheroes.
Oh, so we got to get Mark's story in there now. We need a superhero story.
Yeah.
That's like, having that's like the place where I get my pizzas. They have a crustless pizza. For I guess for the gluten-free folk, you can get all the toppings that are on the pizza, including the melted cheese, in a bake, just no crust. I'm like, but it's not pizza.
No,
it's
I had a guy working on a superhero story for me, and he's been so nervous because he's a local guy that's got a real unique style, and he's looking at all the other artwork going in, and he's starting to get that Wayne's World, I'm not worthy feeling about it. And I'm like, no, turn in your story. You got a great style. I wouldn't have asked you to be in this book if I didn't think you could do it. Come on, do it. Just do it. And if it makes it in there, I still hope that he'll send me the artwork, but it's been since August and I'm starting to worry. So
I think he's going to get in there.
I hope so.
Yeah, it's just
Come on,
such a
James.
wide variety.
You can do this.
So I haven't gone down the tiers on this thing yet a little bit. We can't really talk about the stories because, my God, we'd be here till midnight trying to review each story that's in there right now.
Yeah, and you don't want to have me start talking about the stories anyway, because I can go on and on about this stuff, and then pretty soon everybody goes, we all know everything's in the book, so why should we buy it? So, no.
Sure.
But there's such a great amount of stories. Like if you scroll down just a little bit, there's a little snippet of the dreaded Dinosaur Man from Eric Hodson. You just pass it.
Is that him right there?
Yeah, that's Eric Hodson, who does the dreaded Dinosaur Man for it's on Webtoons and it's on Tapas, and he's getting ready to print his own book. We have the secret origin of the dreaded Dinosaur Man in this book.
That's what the folks in the industry call a key issue, people.
Yes.
You want that in your collection.
That's the thought. Yeah. And if you scroll down a little farther, there's a small sliver of a full page illustration that Emily Zelasco did right there. That is off of a Norse poem that's inspired by a Norse poem that centers around Odin. In fact, you see he's got a crow right there on his shoulder. And this is just a small taste of the look that Emily has done. This page alone has got this huge root system underneath that well, or that rock there where that tree is, and it's got a beautiful full tree on it with that great little framework around it. It's just amazing. And I saw that, it's like, wow, this is crazy. And I printed Emily Zelasco in the Flint Comics and Entertainment paper. She did a very cartoony slice of life comic strip for me called Piece of Cake. I bumped into her at a convention, and I'm like, if you could keep doing this every month, I would love to print you. So she kept sending stuff in. That's Hatch, and that's by Glenn Fleming, who is from England, and he is a master at design. He does this magazine called Comics Unlimited that's available over on Amazon, but he's had this character for a long time. It's kind of a bald-looking cartoony type character. The whole strip doesn't have a word in it except for the words that you see on the cover of the book. He doesn't speak. It's a mute strip, but it's really good, and it's very. I'm not going to give any more away on it except to tell you that you'll have to pick it up and read it. And there's a small taste of some of the stories that I've got listed. That is from and if I don't get this right, I'm going to be in trouble. Detective Ted Tired is the name of the character. And that's by Jake Twister, who goes by Stinch. He started sending stuff to us or talking to us in the chat. And he was really funny. We had him on a couple of times, and he was hilarious. And then he asked if he could do a story for the book. And we're like, yeah, well, send us some samples. And he showed us what he was working on. It's like, dude, you got to do a story for this strip for the book. This is amazing. And it's really, really good. Can't talk it up enough. And that is a strip from the Traveler's Desire, I believe it's called. Desire. That J.R. Harris has done. And I call him Josh. I started printing Josh's work in the Flint Comics paper. In fact, Josh is working on another product for us for Arrow Comics. But he did this story in such a great Miyazaki style. And he threw it up on the web, and I got a hold of him immediately once I saw it. And I said, you got to let me print this in Revolt. This is really awesome, and it really adds to the variety of the book. So as you can tell, it's very inspired, and it's really a homage to Nausicaa by Miyazaki. So one of my favorite cartoons, by the way. Yeah, that's two different cover sets.
Now, is this the first Revolt? No, this is 4.0 I'm seeing. So, or is that Arrow?
No, this is the fourth version of Arrow Comics.
Gotcha.
Is what it is. Arrow started back in '85 with Ralph Griffith and Stuart Kerr. There were Ralph and Stu. You looked on the front cover. They did books like my book was the first one that they had printed over there called Tales from the Aniverse that I did with Susan Van Camp. And then there was Dead World and The Realm and Night Streets by Mark Bloodworth and System 7. And they ran through the 80s pretty much to, I think, 89 or 90. And then because of the constriction of distributors, they got caught with their pants down. They were just guys doing comics, doing what they love, and they weren't really keeping track of the bookkeeping. And they ended up getting caught with distributors owing them tens of thousands of dollars.
Ooh.
And they had to go under. They had to stop printing, but they gave the properties, because Arrow has always been big on creator-owned stuff. Arrow really doesn't own any property. Everybody that works for Arrow owns their own property. We're really the first creator-owned comic company that was out there. And everybody, all of this stuff and all the stuff we're doing in the future that's Arrow Comics will never be owned by Arrow. It'll always be creator-owned. But what happened is Ralph and Stu ended up giving Dead World and the Realm to the artists that did the work in just a small bit of compensation for the money that they weren't able to turn back to them, because everybody was working for royalties at the time.
Right.
And they in turn took Realm and Dead World and sold them to Caliber, to Gary Reed. And Gary Reed's been running with them, or had been running with them ever since. And they're still over at Caliber. But then Arrow came back for a little while when there was a little bit of funding that Ralph had arranged to do. And they did a zombie book called The Dead for a couple of issues. And then they couldn't keep that running either. So they shut down for a couple more years. And then I got in with an old friend of mine, a retailer up in Saginaw by the name of Scott Moore. And the two of us got together and we did Arrow Comics again. And we kept that running from the late 90s until the like 2003. I think it was. We did 50 or 60 different books. Dark Oz that Ralph and Stu wrote. Wonderland that Ralph and Stu wrote. Arrow Anthology we did. And the last issue of Arrow Anthology was also a flip book, just like this. We did War of the Worlds. We did, of course, my mind's going to go blank. Corvus, which is a barbarian tale. We started another line of manga-inspired books because we couldn't get Diamond to take us seriously, that we wanted to do. We want to do sequential art in all forms. So we started Arrow Manga. We printed Butterfly Gun and Descendants of Toshin and a few other titles there. And we just kept doing whatever products we could in order to sell to the retailers. And we just couldn't get past that, the visibility level in the green section. And we ran into so many problems with Diamond that about 2003, we got totally discouraged and shut down.
Yeah, that's the thing that a lot of people, you don't understand. When you create your comic book, you want to go the store route.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't get into Diamond, the stores aren't going to see you. And if you do get into Diamond, Diamond can take you out. And they've done it to plenty of creators where they said, you know what, you're only selling. Back in the 90s, if you were only selling 70,000 copies, you weren't enough. I'm making a number up, mind you, but
I think their number at the time was 1,500.
Okay, 1,500.
Yeah. And we were barely, getting by because we were in the midst of a large green section that they just threw everything in. And it got to the point where we were screaming at our rep. And back then they actually had reps for the independent guys that would handle their accounts. Our rep told us that they could edit us any way they want. They don't have to include an image of the cover if they want or if they don't want. And that just, we were literally at their mercy. And there were so many times where they edited our listing description, or the one time they printed our cover image smaller than the smallest postage stamp that you can ever imagine.
Wow.
In the midst of that book, and we're calling them up and going, what are you doing to us? And we were getting in orders of 500 and 600. And it got to be just an aggravating tug of war, literally, with them just trying to get noticed. And then we realized that the retailers were really just ordering us for their pull lists. If they had a fan, if we were able to catch a fan outside, and this is before the internet really took off. If we had a fan that was lucky enough to see us in the green section, the retailer would order us, and then they'd hope that Diamond would send it in. So we had retailers coming at us going, well, I ordered Land of Oz. I ordered 5 copies, and I only got 3. Why are you shorting Diamond? And we're like, why would we want to short Diamond? Diamond sends us a purchase order. We fill the purchase order. In fact, at the time, I think Diamond had 6 or 12 distribution points anyway, so we were shipping boxes all over the place, and we were fulfilling our purchase orders. So the retailers weren't getting all of their books.
Yeah. Diamond is still shorting people today.
And it got to be really frustrating for us.
And if they're not shorting them, Randy, they're sending them a great big box with one comic in it.
I believe it.
Which retailers absolutely love because the shipping costs are enormous for that.
Yep.
So I tell you, I love the covers too that you got on here. I mean,
thank you. Yeah.
This is not. This is better than what you would expect from some indie comic back in the 80s when it was run out of a garage.
Yeah, we're really trying. When and all of those covers, I have to tell you, except for one, were offered to me. One of them I requested, and that was Russ's cover, because I had to have Russ in the book at the time, and Russ's schedule was so busy. I figured I'd just be lucky to get a cover from him. And then there was a set of circumstances came up, and Russ said, "You know what? I'm going to do a short story for you that I'm going to print in my second Only Death Can Save Us." And that story is amazing. And I show that artwork in the videos, some of the artwork for that. I think it's a 7 or 8 page story, but it's phenomenal. It looks like a cross between Dave Gibbons and Gil Kane. It's just an amazing piece of work.
I can't wait to see that.
Then the Mischievous cover there. I met Daphne and JD through the podcast, and I knew who they were. They knew who I was. And when we were talking about Revolt, I just happened to mention offhand to Daphne, hey, if you thought about doing a Mischievous story from Tales from the Aniverse, I would love it if you wanted to print it. And it was like, really? And she usually doesn't do any other characters other than their own. And here, not only did she do a great Mischievous story that JD wrote, but she loves the characters so much. She did this color piece that you see here. And it didn't take, it took me a couple of weeks to figure out that's a cover. I got to do that as a cover. And if I do that as a cover, I'm going to have to do a flip book.
Yeah.
So then I called and got a hold of Chris Skelf. And Chris is a friend of mine that I've known for years. And Chris does a lot of advertising storyboard work. But he taught himself Photoshop while he was doing comics. He used to do used to be Realm Comics, I think it was called. He did Battlestar Galactica back when it was the Richard Hatch Cylons.
Right.
And then he was working for Dark Horse doing Star Wars material, and he's done a lot of covers for G-Fan and that taught himself how to paint in Photoshop. And back when I was doing Flint Comics, I printed a couple of covers of him. Some of them were really funny ones, but this one was an exciting Jetpack Girl story that I thought really fit the tone of the book. So I called him up, asked him if we can use a cover, and he said, yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Now you can't do a triple flip book,
no,
Randy. So now you obviously had to say, I've got to print 2 versions of this book.
Yes. Well, that turned out to be so, but who was going to do the 4th cover? I was thinking, well, there's a Retro Ram, and Retro Ram there is also from Tales from the Aniverse. He runs a set of like Galactic Rangers. It's Retro Ram and his Rocket Rangers is what the strip used to be called back when I was doing Tales from the Aniverse a long time ago. Well, we had a dear friend, actually Ralph of Ralph and Stu, who's one of the founders of Arrow. He found out that his time here on this plane wasn't going to be very long. And he still had his cognitive function. He went out by COPD, which was a shortness of oxygen or oxygenation through the lungs. And he was already so in ill health that they weren't going to give him a new set of lungs. So they basically sent him home and told him to enjoy his time.
Yeah.
And once we found that out, we had him on one of the Sunday Funnies programs along with Stuart to talk about the early Arrow Comics days. But he told me he really wanted to do, he had always talked to me about doing a Retro Ram story. And I said, do it. Just do it. We'll get it in print. It'll be great. Just write it. Do whatever you can on it, whenever you can on it. So he sat and he wrote a Retro Ram story, the one that he always wanted to do. He passed the plot over to Stu before he passed, and Stu went through and scripted it. And then Mark Bloodworth, who did Night Streets for the original set of Arrow Comics, went through and did breakdowns and roughs for the pages. Turned out to be a 10-page story. He turned that over to Jason Moore, and Jason had done the zombie book the second time through, called The Dead, that Arrow that Ralph and Stu had written. So he did the finishes and the inks, and Jason is a longtime inker in the comic field. Then they had, after Ralph had passed by this point, Vince Locke came in and did a portrait of Ralph that's in the last page, down in the corner of the last page, dedicating the story to Ralph, and we're dedicating the whole book really to Ralph because he was a dear friend of ours and he was one of the real original founders of Arrow Comics. When I mentioned to Ralph that I was working on a graphic novel that I was going to print and crowdfund, that I was going to put the Arrow Comics logo on it. And I told him, I'm thinking about bringing Arrow Comics back. And his face lit up and he said, do it. Just do it. Just do whatever you have to with it and just keep it running. So that's what we're doing. That's why Arrow Comics is on this book. And that I stopped working on the graphic novel, and now Arrow Comics is working on a whole set of direct market books, which if you scroll down a little bit, that's some of the stuff that we're currently working on. And Revolt is part of that. Yeah.
So, but this is the first Revolt anthology book.
This is the first return for Arrow Comics. This is the Revolt anthology book. I call it a sequential art collection. Anthology in the comic field seems to have such a negative connotation, which I really don't like because I love them. Yeah, I love short story collections. Yeah.
If you look at shilling moment here, if you look further down in the description, folks, you will find that not only are we distributing crowdfunded comics to local comic shops and dispersing them to the people that you want to mail them to, so that you can spend your time writing and drawing and not stuffing boxes. That's what we do.
Good for you.
But we are also a publisher. Critical Blast Publishing launched 2 years ago. Our first book was an anthology of 10 short stories called Gods and Services.
Okay.
And it was our first, so we didn't get a whole lot of stories submitted, but we ended up with 10 really good ones.
Good.
And I had reached out to people that I knew from doing book reviews.
Yeah.
Like, hey, could you help us out? So, people like Ira Bloom, who's got, big book deal with Scholastic, said, absolutely. Cool. Wrote us a $20 short story that, his lawyer's charging $300 for because he had an agent that had to split the 17 cents out of the $20 that she got. That kind of help we got. Mm-hmm. But, because we did it and because we paid the people and because we put it out, when we said, the devil, short stories of people's encounters with the devil, we had 175 submissions to that thing.
Oh, sweet.
And they were all so good.
Yeah, I'll bet.
We ended up with 20 that we printed, and we're going to do The Devil You Know Better at some point. So anthologies are great for just picking up, flipping through, finding a place to start and going.
Yep. And the Revolt book is really, like I said, it's really a showcase of the people that you see or hear all the time on Indie Volt. And we got a worldwide internet radio reach. I mean, this is only Tuesday night's show, we hit into the 89,000 mark.
Oh, that's
and we found a lot of
I'm not worthy.
Now there are so many people that don't seem to be able to wrap their head around those numbers, and anybody that comes on that and like with James and working in the book, well, what am I going to do? No, it's just a podcast, just like us, where you're just here talking with friends.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. A lot of the people that listen to us throughout the world are guys or girls or people that are exactly like us, that most of them are sitting there working on their own work while they're listening to us talk about comics. And the way I know that is because my friends list on Facebook literally doubled in the last 2 years. And the majority of those are all talented artists from everywhere that you can imagine that have sent me friend requests. And you know how many spammers are on Facebook. You have to check out everybody that comes in, and I always do. And you always see the people that I friend on there are people that have done their own work, that are working in who knows where, music or art or whatever, that have found us through the Indie Volt Media Network.
Yeah. Facebook has taught me that I'm a handsome guy.
Say what?
Facebook has taught me that I'm a handsome guy. I cannot count the number of Russian women who are baring their chests wanting to be my friend.
Yeah. I get those every once in a while.
Yeah.
But it's we tell everybody on the podcast that Varian and I all have faces made for radio. So you really want to be on. You really want to listen to us more than watch us anyway. But we try to keep our background interesting. But
I like it. Varian has taken care of you on the Indycron setup, so you are now on Indycron while we've been talking here.
Oh, has he? Oh, that's great.
So
Thank you,
that's
Marion.
great. Indycron's got a great reach. Thank you, Pixel Trader, for taking care of that while we were live on here.
And again, that's just me not getting out there and thinking. That's all. Because Pixel Trader is also a friend of the show. In fact, he sponsors a shoe cam that we've got that's aimed at the Indie Princess's feet because she likes large, loud shoes, and folks like to look at those large, loud shoes. So we have a shoe cam sponsored by Indycron.
Nice. Okay.
We try to keep it fun. We really do. We try to have fun, a lot of fun doing the show.
I want to take a look at the tiers here before we wrap things up so people know what they can get in on. This is your featured tier. This is Feeling a Little Mischievous.
Yep.
This gives you cover set 1.
And Mischievous is a bounty hunter along with her assistant Ganda, who's a drinking duck that go out and find bounties. And we've had I've had Mischievous for a number of years. She was created by a friend of mine, Susan Van Camp, and for Tales from the Aniverse.
Yeah.
And we've back when we were doing when I came back and printed comics as Massive Comics, I did 3 issues of Tales from the Aniverse, and the second issue of Tales, that if you scroll up, you can see the cover for that. Sue did a painting for the front of the cover, is actually a gallery of different talented people at that time doing their version of Mischievous inside of that book. So it's really a focus on the Mischievous character. I figured we'd tie that in with the Daphne Lage and J.D. Calderon story and that great cover that's part of the flip book for Revolt. So we're offering a Mischievous tier where you can get all 3 of those issues of Tales from the Aniverse and the Revolt with that cover on it at the same time.
And a random Arrow comic, so you don't know, you might get something from the very, very early days here.
It's everything from most of it's from the 3rd version of Arrow comics, but there are a couple of first back in the 80s books that'll sneak in there. Like I said in the video, don't call them antiques, just call it great reading. Absolutely.
Great reading doesn't get old.
No.
For $10 you can get the Revolt on PDF. Do you got to flip your device over when you get halfway through the comic?
No, you don't. No, you don't. You're going to get one incredibly large PDF file that you get to scroll through. That's going to have all of the stories, including the stretch goal stories, all of the covers in that file, and maybe 1 or 2 little surprises added in there because I've got some stuff that nobody has seen.
Oh, very nice.
And some stuff that is the first time that it's ever been in color that I plan on just sliding in there. It's going to be a large PDF file. But the reason we're offering that, because I'm a very physical comic guy. When it comes to comics, I want to hold it in my hands. We're offering this only to customers outside of North America because we know how crazy postage has gotten. Yeah. And we want this stuff to be seen. That's why the all of the stretch goals are based on backers, because we want to get this in as many people's hands as possible. So the PDF file is available for anybody outside of North America. We'll be more than happy to send it to them, a few extra surprises so that we don't have to pay postage. They don't have to worry about the cost. It's $10 US. And it'll just give them everything. But everybody here on the North American continent or in the United States, we really want them to get the book so that they can hold it in their hands and experience that flip cover.
Absolutely. And the only people I've seen that have been wanting the PDFs have been either international backers or I suppose our friend Robert is an international backer of a sort. He's working up in the tundra. And he just, he doesn't have a place to put comics. So he's got to get digital to read on his device while he's working the oil pipelines.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm clicked on it.
Clicked off it. Anyway, we also have cover set 1 and cover set 2 that we offer.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get down there too.
We offer another tier where you can buy both of them at once. It's the same interior on both books. It's just a different cover on the outside. And I should also point out that the retro Ram cover that we got is by Kirk Jarvinen, and Kirk hasn't done anything professionally in quite a while. He's done a lot of art commissions, but he hasn't done anything that's been in print, I don't think, in years. He did Aquaman Time and Tide that Peter David wrote, way
Yeah.
back when, did the artwork for that. And he's done a lot of, he did Nomad for Marvel for a couple of issues, did stories here and there, did a fill-in issue of X Factor and that. But
So did he design that costume?
No, that's my costume. For
No,
Retro
no, no,
Ram
no.
or
No,
for
not Retro Ram. But when he did Aquaman Time and Tide, did he design that water camouflage costume?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't believe so. And I might have the name of that wrong too then, because he did, I think the Aquaman he handled still had the orange shirt. It was the last Aquaman miniseries before he lost his arm that Peter David wrote.
Okay.
Because he stopped, they were going to have him do the series, but he didn't want to cut Aquaman's arm off.
Well, his arm got better.
Yeah, it did.
Funny
But
how that works.
At the time, he didn't want to be involved with something like that.
Yeah. You always got to do something to the character to make him more interesting.
Yeah. Well, it says a lot for his character. You know, he wanted to keep, he thought it was an outrageous thing for them to do to the character, and he didn't want to be involved in it.
Yeah. I love that you got a retailer perk here. And
I do that too. Yeah. Well, I was a retailer, like I said, for a good decade. Yeah. So I know how it goes. And for that, we're offering 3 copies of each book for $75.
That's a deal.
And we ask that the retailer verifies that he has a store, that he has at least a business license in order to get that.
Sure. I'm going to send this off to my comic shop guy for this, because he's always asking, said, when you run into retailer perks, let me know. He's huge on promoting the indies.
And it's going to carry a $19.99 price tag on it when the books are printed. Just so you know. And and who knows how thick it's going to end up being. I hope it ends up being really thick. That's
the other thing I want to say here is that, I'm like, where are the stretch goals? Where are the stickers and the bookmarks and the patches and the gewgaws and the statues?
Well, if you scroll up on the I believe it's up on the actual campaign. It's like no frills, just great comics. That's what we're out to do.
If your stretch goal is more comic,
yes,
more stories, and that's you don't have. First of all, I hate having to go through all the tiers and like. Okay, I want to get a little bit of this. Go light on that. I want one of these. It doesn't come in this tier. I've got to fix it up. This is perfect. It's the book. And again, the whole retailer tier. I'm trying to make every crowdfunded comic a retailer tier, Randy, because what we're doing is we're trying to do the distribution thing for crowdfunders. And initially, it was for the international folk. We're handling the company men for Kemosabe. And because he's coming in from Australia, and because he's going through our service, his shipping is $12 per unit instead of $25.
Keep talking. I'm going to be right back. I have to step offline for just a second.
I will continue talking to the crowd. So if you haven't heard of that yet, that is Critical Blast Logistics. We're trying to handle the fulfillment for your crowdfunders. This has largely been targeted to international, but I've had enough people who are domestic asking me about it, who, I was like, well, I can't save you money, but if you do want to rather spend your time making books instead of sealing up boxes, yes, we will definitely help you with it. But the part that I'm talking about, having retailer tiers is that when I get the books from people, I encourage overshipment, and that's going to give us inventory. So if you sold 100, give us 150.
Yep.
Because that point is when I'm going to say, hello, retailers, I've got 20 copies of the Company Men. I've got 5 copies of the Embrace. I've got 7 copies of this. How many do you want of each? And by the way, they're going to come in one shipping box.
There you go.
Your shipping is minimized. You can't get these anywhere else because the crowd funds are over.
Yeah.
I send all the money back to the creators. I say, hey, you sold a book through us. And here it is.
That's awesome. And you're filling a service. Varian Grant, who owns the Indie Volt, he's doing Liberty distribution that's going to cover the same thing.
I've heard of you guys.
Only he's going to also do thin books as well. Any type of alternative or independent product, he wants to get out there to the retailers just like you do.
Good.
He's shipping them in boxes. He's shipping them bagged and boarded. He just wants to get product out to people, and all of the Arrow stuff is going to be available through Liberty.
Good deal. Good. More of us doing this will get more stores
And the
filled
more,
with comics.
oh yeah, back when Arrow Comics first started in '85, and Stuart told me this, that he remembers that number 27 different distributors
Yeah, Friendly
were
Franks.
were out there moving products. Even Comics Hawaii was a big one. Sunrise and Glenwood was big. Was really huge for us back when we first started. All of these guys aren't around anymore. It's just Diamond.
It's just Diamond. Well, now there's Lunar, and there used to be another one, but
there's Liberty, and Peter Samedi from Alterna is talking about Alterna distribution. See, this is the first time I've heard that you're doing Critical Blast distribution. I had no idea. That's awesome.
Well, it comes from having all these interviews, Randy. It's like I talk with all these people. I'm like, oh, I like your character design. That image should be a sticker, or that should be a patch, or where's the logo that we can put on stuff.
Right.
And when I talk to the UK folk, it was always the shipping kills us, because people love our book, but they don't want to pay more for the shipping than they are for the book itself.
Yep.
And I've done IT all my life, and a lot of it's been for logistics companies. So I know this stuff. I'm like, well, if you did this, and I started to tell them how to do it, and the voice in my head said, no, shut up and do it yourself, because you can't make comics, but you can make money doing this. And I've got 3 clients lined up right now. And I've been perfectly transparent with the business plan. I show them the spreadsheet. I'm like, here's everything I charge, right down to the strips of Scotch tape.
Yeah.
And here's what I make off of it. You're seeing my profit. And what I haven't, really included in that is I'm going to go a little in the hole on each of these. Not in the hole. It's going to eat into my profit, because the first 5 clients I get, so I've already got Kemosabe and 2 others who have lined up.
Okay.
I'm going to go to Sticker Mule, and I'm going to order poly bags printed with their logo on it. And the Gemini mailer is going to go into the poly bag. I'm going to label that. So when it arrives, you're going to know what you got. It's going to be an event for you to open this thing, because it's going to have the logo of the comic that's inside on this big white poly bag.
Oh, that's cool. Good for you.
I'm trying to make it fun. Fun for the readers, and the thrill for the creators.
That's all part of doing this. That's why we do the Indie Volt show. That's why we're doing Revolt. It's because
if you're not having fun, why do it?
Yes, exactly. That's why I did the paper for 10 years, because it was so fulfilling. And like I said, it really reinstilled my love for this art form, because people are out there. We just have to find them and reel them in. They're out there, and they desperately want to be entertained. You just have to show them you're a good. I hate to say that. That might not come out right. You just want to show them that you can provide a good time, with the work that you do, and to bring them in and have them, pretty soon you've got a comic fan.
I'll go ahead and put my URL on bathroom walls.
Well, that's what's cool. I've got a video up if you go over to the YouTube channel, Arrow Comics 4.0, I talk about doing Flint Comics. I used to call it the Zim Geek channel, but I just changed it over to Arrow Comics 4.0. But one of the videos that I'm talking about the Flint Comics paper, I show one that's tacked above a urinal.
Yeah.
And that, to me, that was so awesome. We walked into this great Italian place that we have around here. It's a mom and pop store, and they have a cork board up above the urinal that they've been taking the Flint Comics paper and tacking it up above so that you could read the comic strips while you're doing your business. Incredible. Yeah. Love that. Nothing made me happier than to walk into one of the local watering holes here and jump into the bathroom and see a Flint comic straddled over the stall.
Yeah, because I've seen it with sports pages, but I can't read the entire article. I'm old, but I'm not that old. It doesn't take me that long to get my business done. But I can read a couple of comic strips and be in and out.
Well, we like I said, we used to call ourselves Flint's favorite bathroom reader for a reason. Yeah,
there you go. All right, folks.
But these are short stories also, and it's not like an omnibus book. If you try to read an omnibus book on the John, you have a hard time. It's so bulky and big. You're having a rough time holding on to it. This is comic book sized. It's paperback. It's going to be handy, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, you'd cut the circulation off on your legs too by the time you were done reading it.
Yeah. If you hadn't dropped it on the floor 5 times already.
Exactly, folks. This is a no-brainer. This is a huge book. Tons of stories in it. All of them complete stories. Mm-hmm. Black and white. The stretch goals mean every time you hit a stretch goal, you're going to get another story in the book. This is going to be the Sears catalog of independent comics by the time.
That's what we're shooting for. Yeah.
I'm saying that to a group of people who don't remember the Sears catalog.
Yeah.
But
Shonen Jump is a really good example, except they're complete stories, and you never know the type of story you're going to get from one story to the next. But it's all great reading, all just phenomenal stuff.
Pops Van Zant is in the chat. I'm not. I don't know what he wants to talk about, but I bet he wants to talk with you.
Well, he probably wants me to tell everybody that we're going to talk about it again on his CromCon that's coming up on Saturday.
Yes, so that's not this
I'm
Saturday,
be on there
next Saturday.
Next Saturday, yeah, next Saturday night I'll be on there.
And Pops, I am not doing Podcast Palooza on that Saturday. I am freeing up the time for CromCon. We did Podcast Palooza last Saturday.
Oh,
I had a show just like this every hour on the hour from 1 o'clock through 8 o'clock. Different creator every time. So
sweet.
I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to do it for a longer period, but I'm not going to compete with CromCon. So
that just makes sense,
Well, yeah.
Because again, a lot of us, and if any of us that are working on comics know, it is really difficult to find good podcasts out there that you love listening to while you're working. So that's part of the fun of working with the Indie Volt podcast folks, that we're out there at least for a couple hours, just jabbing about comics.
And I could talk about comics with somebody else who loves to talk about comics. I could spend hours.
Yeah.
You can go off on a 20-minute tangent with the words "remember when," and you're down the rabbit hole. You might be there for a while.
Real easy. Yeah, it is.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Randy, thank you so much for coming on our channel tonight. I've had such a blast talking with you here.
We're done?
We don't have to be. We don't have to be.
I'm sorry. I just jab around and on. Everybody knows.
I can too. I mean,
I even have a soapbox I pull up on the show every once in a while that I get on way too often. So
no, get on the soapbox and keep going. We had Bill Willingham on the LCS Guys show, and we went 2.5 hours before we realized that there was a clock somewhere that we should have been looking at.
Oh, yeah. I've done that. I was on Brian K. Morris's show one time. He runs an hour. We ran for 2 hours and I think 15 minutes.
Yeah. Done it. It happens. And I do the open mic Sundays, and it's the same thing. We get a group of people on. I just throw the link to the stream out in the chat. I'm like, okay, cross my fingers and hold my breath and pucker up.
Yeah.
That, it doesn't get too crazy. But
yeah, if you go through our archive on YouTube under Indie Volt, you'll see some of these podcasts we've run for 2.5 or 3.5. 2 Sundays back, I did a Sunday Funnies show that we ran for 3 and 15, I think it was, maybe even 3.5, because we were talking about Arrow Comics and what we had coming up for the first set of books. So it was crazy, but it was a really good time.
All right. Well, I just threw the link.
We lost our StreamYard halfway through it, so it's a part 1 and part 2. So
I lost my StreamYard one time. I didn't really lose it. I knew where it was. But I had
we got kicked out totally. It's like, what?
Yeah. Well, I have lost my StreamYard when I'm hosting, and the show continued on with the people on it, and they were like, "What do we do?" And like, I couldn't get back in for a while.
Oh boy! Yeah.
But I was doing one stream, and somebody reported us to YouTube. And YouTube stopped us in the last 10 minutes, and we didn't know it.
Wow!
Until somebody in the chat said, "Hey, stream's dead on YouTube." We're simulcasting to Facebook and YouTube at the same time right now. And I was interviewing Dan Than, who has a YouTube channel, and she was doing a crowdfunded comic called Orgasm Girl.
Wow. Okay.
And that was her superpower, and it wasn't prurient. It wasn't like a lot of nudity or anything. It was just like this is what I do. I get in fights. I go like this. You don't want to fight anymore, and I just knock you out.
Okay.
Well, YouTube, some Karen called up YouTube and said, hey, they're doing this, and YouTube pulled the plug on us.
They're saying that old word too many times.
Yeah, and they took it down, and I was like, well, that's odd. So I did a search on YouTube for the word, and I'm like, hello, YouTube, you have these videos, and all we did was talk about a comic book.
Yeah.
And I'm marked not for children, so that I don't have to worry about the 13 and under stuff, because every once in a while, one of us drops an F-bomb on here. And it happens. We're not FCC qualified. Yep. So
same on our show. Yeah. But it's all friends talking to one another. So
exactly.
We usually run a TV or a MADLSV warning up on top in the corner.
MADLSV? No.
Yeah.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah. MA in big letter DLSV. So we poke fun at it. I always say the V stands for variant. So
beware, we have Varian on the show here.
exactly. You got it.
All right. Well, this looks like this has only been launched for 2 days.
Yes.
I just now looked at the day list. Holy.
Yeah, that was kind of an accident too. Well, I really wanted to have it up before that, but again, I get busy. I have a commercial art job that I'm doing here. Plus, I'm trying to get Arrow Comics up and running on a regular basis so that we're always churning out product, and that's a Herculean effort in itself. But I clicked the button and suddenly we were live, and I guess I launched the campaign. Okay.
You're going for 60 days though.
It's my first campaign. So luckily I had the wife go through it and find all the spelling mistakes, and I'm still making corrections on it. People calling up, telling me different things or finding something wrong, or this needs to be listed like that, or like Russ has given me, Russ Leach has given me a couple of really awesome things to do that I've gone through and altered it. I think it's helped it a lot. But yeah, I hope that we're going to roll. And again, the big thing here, and I know we got a $20 book and we have to charge shipping and all of that, but the big thing here is the entertainment value. I think we're just trying to get this book into as many people's hands as possible. So quite honestly, so that we can all show off. And show off what we're capable of doing and entertain you at the same time.
So Randy, you're downplaying something here. I mean, you just said, yeah, I know it's a $20 book and it's $10 shipping. They're all $20 books and $10 shipping, even if they're only 25 pages.
Oh, but we're getting thick. Yeah.
Yep. This is going to be
it's always
the biggest bang for your buck I've ever seen.
I'm old school. I did 10 cent, 12. I broke my teeth on 12-cent and 15-cent books. So I really want to make sure you get a value. In fact, when we do Arrow Comics, we were looking at the market again, and we're like, there's no way we're going to be able to get away without with the short print runs that we're doing without charging $4.99 for the book. And it's like, well, if we're going to do that, we're definitely going to be 32 pages with as many pages of comics in it as possible. So we really. Oh no, we're going through the direct market. We're going to have Liberty. Liberty's got at present, Liberty's got 50 retailer clients that they're servicing, and they're looking at growing like crazy. We don't know, nobody knows anymore how many retail shops are out there, but we'll distribute to whoever wants to display us.
Sure.
Okay. And I'm hoping, I've got my fingers crossed that by the time Arrow gears up to full service, that Liberty will be geared up to full service as well, with a large number of clients able to move some product. Yeah,
well,
see.
A lot of people
see how it goes.
Yeah, what a lot of people I've seen do is they'll crowdfund their book, and you'll have this Indiegogo special, and it's got a special cover, but then they use that money to go direct market with a different cover. They've got the retail cover, $5.99. So you've got the people who funded it by getting the special painted cover that says only on Indiegogo logo kind of thing.
That's what we're doing with one of the books.
Yeah, there you go. Only death can save us.
We're taking that and putting that into 32-page books. And whether that Russ throws an extra short story in there that's in a later volume, or there's another story in there of comic book work, whatever Russ wants us to do, that's what we're going to do. But we are doing Only Death Can Save Us as $4.99 books that we can sell through the retail shops.
Beautiful. Okay, so Randy, what level of success do you have to hit with Revolt for there to be another Revolt?
Oh, that's a good question. I am not sure. It all depends on how successful this is and how badly people want to do it again. We'll see how it goes, one step at a time at this. But we're also we're looking at taking Revolt and knocking that down into smaller versions and adding new material, different covers, and keeping the title rolling for the retailers as well. We're not doing this. We've handled this problem on our show before too, where we've had retailers call us up and going, "You're doing crowdfunding, you're cutting us out." And it's like, no, we're doing crowdfunding in order to get out to an audience. Yes. And with Arrow Comics, we want to do both. We want to do crowdfunding where we get out to a short-term audience doing a big, a thicker product, but we also desperately want to get out there to the retailers because we're big fans too, and we love going to the retail shops. We're not doing this on purpose to hurt anybody's business. We want to be read. We want to be enjoyed and entertaining to as large an audience as possible. We want to get out in front of as many noses as we can. In a good way. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I don't mind that I'm getting the comic directly to me, but the local comic shop, the best thing that could happen to the industry is DC and Marvel collapse. Just go away. I don't care about the big publishers, but the comic shop, that's more than just a place to buy books. That's a communal experience.
I'm in the exact opposite idea. I mean, it's fine if they're going to stay in their present state that they collapse. Absolutely, don't get me wrong. And they're really heading there. They're running into that brick wall faster than they realize. Well, DC might have a good idea because they've stripped off like 4/5 of their employees already and knocked out. Anyway, what I would love to see is them to bring back an era of respectability to the format and to literally show some hardcore respect to these retailers, because ever since the direct market has started up, it's like as if Marvel and DC, all they're out to do is abuse these retailers. Variant covers, multiple covers. You have to buy 100 or 250 in order to get this one cover that absolutely everybody's going to want. And it just gets ridiculous. I honestly do not know how retailers can stay afloat these days.
A lot of them don't.
A lot of them, well, yeah, a lot of them don't, especially now with the last year's worth of headaches. But there has to be companies out there, and it's up. And I stop me if I get on too big of a soapbox. No, we are the independent and alternative market. We're the creative thinkers out there. We are already outside of that box, and we need to get our butts outside of that box in as wide a variety as possible. We don't have to be 32 pages. We don't have to be whatever 6 1/4 wide by 10 and a half tall. We don't have to fit into that bag. We don't have to be backed by that board. We don't necessarily have to fit in that long box. We can do what we need to do in order to get out there in front of the largest amount of audiences we possibly can. And now is the time that's why I call this Revolt. Now is the time for us to step up and to go out there and show off our stuff to as many people as possible and go, hey, comics are viable. Comics are entertaining. Comics are fun. They make money if you allow them to make money. You just look at Hollywood. They figured out how to make these things make money. Why aren't we that are actually in this business showing that same level of respectability to the entire platform? And AT&T and Disney both ought to be ashamed of themselves for not going out there and they got money, put it back into the system and help this system survive. Excuse me. I gotta mute myself for just a second. My throat gets real dry.
Got you. Heroenberg, we'll find out if you can. I'm sure. Go just call them up, Heroenberg. Heroenberg's in the chat. He also has an indie book. I called Heroenberg, and he says.
Oh, we had a Scott at Galaxy Comics. Yeah, absolutely. That's Scott Moore. And say hello from you. Yes, exactly. Scott's still got some of that Arrow 3.0 product too. It's just Scott's got stuff. He's one of those retailers that's been around forever, and he's got all those dusty boxes I was talking about earlier. Yeah, and he runs around like crazy with all sorts of different comics that you'd be amazed what's in that shop if you just start looking around a little bit.
Those are the shops I love.
What I was good, yeah, me too, absolutely. What I was going to say is DC was doing Wednesday comics for the longest time, which is the same format, almost the exact same format I was doing the Flint Comics and Entertainment paper. I was so. $4. It was $4. I was so happy to see it come out because I knew how much money they had spent to print that thing, which is next to nothing. No special cover, no staples, and all this. They were making a killing on that. All the retailers had to do was just buy it, put it on their stands, and let it sell because it was pretty. It was a really pretty book. They only kicked out enough of those Wednesday comics to fill a coffee table book, and they stopped because they could do a hardbound book, so they stopped doing it. Where's the respectability if they had kept doing it, even if they weren't pulling down good numbers right away? I know they weren't spending that much money on it because I know how much it prints or how much it costs to print on newsprint. If they'd have kept it up for a year or 2 years, they'd have had a solid product and an every Wednesday experience that customers would run to the retailers to find. They just had to keep it going and had to watch the quality on it. Marvel Comics tried the same thing with Marvel Comics Presents. They had an awesome product there for the longest time. And then the interior stories just kept getting worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
And that the quality on the title just slid. I think DC was doing it. What was that, Showcase? They were doing a Showcase book for a while, or Action Comics was like that.
Well, they did Action Comics Weekly.
Yeah.
That was I don't know. That does like a short little chapters, and they kept coming back. But
that's the idea for the retailers, though, is to get that Wednesday's the day. That's why it was called Wednesday Comics, to get those get those customers coming in every week looking for the book, the next chapter on that book. And you don't see that now. We had this big Diamond shut down for a long time. What did Marvel and DC do in order to help the retailers out? Did they do anything? I know Robert Kirkman was nice enough to kick out a Walking Dead book.
Yeah.
After he had already stopped it.
DC went out and said, you know what, we're going to distribute books through Lunar and that other company, and it was amazing. How Diamond said was like, did we say August? We're shut down till no. We can ship books in May. Absolutely, we can ship books in May.
Hey,
let's ship books in May.
I guess we're coming back. Yeah.
The comeback will be stronger than the whatever it was we had.
This market has slid into such a almost like a Pavlovian response for so many years. With all of these companies. They need to break out. We're in a creative field. We're in a field of entertainment. We should be out there trying to entertain folks any way we know how.
Well, here's the thing. And
that's why a lot of us are podcasting, just to talk about what we love, our passion about this art form.
Well, here's the thing, though, Randy, is that we don't have publishers anymore who are run by the Stan Lees and the Dick Giordanos and the Julie Schwartz. We are not seeing publishers published by people who love comics. We're seeing publishers who are there to maintain intellectual property values for their corporate overlords, so that they can make movies and sell lunchboxes and T-shirts.
I don't even think it's like that. I think sometimes they just have to keep the name going, not the property. Yeah. Look at all these different versions of these characters that are out there, and I'm not saying at all remotely that we shouldn't be diverse and that we shouldn't have multiple voices out there. That's necessary. What we need to do is create newer and better icons, which gives them more stuff to sell if they bother to do it. But I don't want to tell them how to run their business. I want to run my own business, and exactly. I want the retailers to stay out there long enough for me to get product out to them, to try to generate an audience of regular readers who are going to love the stuff that I do.
Yeah, because first of all, you don't want to tell DC how to fix themselves, because that just makes it more competitive against you. And you
exactly.
You put out the better product and outsell them.
But see, that's the sad thing, is that they would actually be competitive against a little guy. And they're so big. They're hundreds of times bigger than any of us, 10 times bigger than the rest of the market put together, that if they would bother to channel a little energy, a little caring, a little love back into this market, it would grow.
Yeah.
And they would make more money.
And I think they always show me a glimmer of hope sometimes, like this Infinite Frontier stuff they're doing now. I did Crime Syndicate #1. I love that.
It reminds me of that commercial with the old guy in the fishing pole. Oh, almost had it there, didn't you?
Yes, exactly.
Hey, there it is. Oh, no.
But DC's got the multiverse. DC has had the Golden Goose for years.
They both have multiverses. Marvel's using theirs real heavy this year with the Squadron Supreme.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, Marvel did it with when they had Marvel Max and they had Marvel Ultimate. Those were completely separate lines that were set in a different world. DC's been the multiverse king since Green Lantern #40
until Crisis came in.
Yeah, exactly.
And they screwed it up for everybody.
They screwed it up, and they've never managed to straighten it up again.
That's what I tell everybody. All of my superheroes died at Crisis and Heroes Reborn, and they've just been replaced by soulless zombies. And now they're soulless imitations of soulless zombies.
DC has the opportunity to have 52 imprints of their stuff. I mean, yeah, they've got the Charlton characters that live on, whatever Earth it is. You could
Preach
be
to the
running
choir there.
Watchmen.
Yep.
You'd be running Watchmen stories regularly with the regular Charlton characters.
Please don't run Watchmen anymore. Just keep reprinting that one book and just let it all, just the rest of it go. Create new stuff, new character. Here's a good example: Milestone. You'd be running Milestone like crazy. They should have been running Milestone into the ground the last 20 years.
Yes, never should have went away.
Creating new characters, with different varying opinions, just bringing in a super larger audience if they want it. They just don't want it. They're
Why
just
don't
out
they
there. They're too busy thinking that so many people have to know these characters in order to sell the underoos. When really, if they were to entertain people, they'd get to know the characters.
Exactly.
They don't even want to entertain anymore. They just want to put out the new version of this character in order to attract the whatever Hollywood person to do the character on whatever screen that they can find.
Instead of with Batman now.
Yeah. Well, how many ways can you do Batman? I was offered back when Bob Schreck was editor. I talked with him for a while. He said, "Send me a Batman story. I'll print it. I'll work with you. We'll get it printed." I said, "Dude, I think everything's been done with Batman. I would rather do something else." So, let's do something else. Let's do more. I was always a big fan of the oddball character. In fact, the last pitch I made to Marvel was with one of those characters, and their editor actually looked at me and said, "Do we actually own this character?" I'm not lying. That's it. And I threw my hands up. I says, "I think I'm done. I gotta go out and stay in this alternative market or find something else to do, because if you don't know the characters that you own, there's a problem."
That's when you look him in the eye and say, no, I brought this one in here. And then you walk out and publish it and hope they never do anything to stop you.
Well, hey, right now, I think there's a wide open market for that kind of work. I think there has been since the Image days, because they walked on so many different, they used a lot of names and likenesses of characters that Marvel never did anything about.
Oh, yeah. Well,
as long as you're not close to their big icons or step on their underroo deal, they're all good. So,
yeah, I mean, there's there's a Sandman at both DC and Marvel. There's a Sabretooth at both DC and Marvel.
Mm-hmm. Well, the list can go on for days, I bet.
Yeah,
of characters, of names that they've used. Black Cat. There's how many Black Cats are out there? Yeah,
Captain Marvel.
Yep. Well, yeah, that's a whole nother. I've got videos up on my channel about that.
That's a whole show.
Oh, that is so fascinating, though, because it's such an example of exactly how this market is. And how cutthroat it has always been.
Oh yeah, that whole Split Zam guy, the guy who did the Split Zam Captain Marvel, he also did a Plastic Man. It just he's one of those. I don't care. I'm just gonna use it.
Marvel paid him to go away. Did you know that?
I did not know that. I think
You know what he ended up doing?
No,
Marvel gave him money to go away, and so that they could take the name and do the Rick Jones Captain Marvel. If you ever go into the stores way back when we were kids and you saw those magazines that looked close to those Warren magazines, but they were shoddier and they were newsprint, Voodoo Tales and Weird Tales or horror magazines that had some kind of comic strips in them, and mostly like famous monster articles plastered in with crazy little small layouts with black and white photos that they never bothered to screen and all that. That was the guy. Okay. He went out and did those magazines after Marvel, said, "Thanks. If you go away, it's cool, because then we can take that name, because nobody's watching over that name."
Yeah, that's the sad part, is that DC lost it when they bought it.
DC paid Fawcett for the Billy Batson Captain Marvel until they bought the character in the 90s, and they had started Shazam in the 70s.
Yeah.
But they paid Fawcett every time they used it, instead of coming up to Fawcett going, "Okay, how much? Just let us have the character. How much?" Instead of doing that, they kept renting the character.
I did not know that. I thought when it came over that they had purchased it outright.
No, they rented the rights. Fawcett paid them when the lawsuit stopped back in the 50s, when Captain Marvel, who was being printed every other week, I don't think up until that point, they might have knocked the Captain Marvel adventures back down to monthly at that point. The Fawcett had seen their sales go over the hump, and it was starting to drop. And they figured that the market was done and people were starting to resent comics. So they told DC, look, just stop the lawsuit. We'll pay you a couple $100,000 and we'll just go away. And DC said, yeah, okay. So they took the money, which was probably the money for their lawyer fees, and let Fawcett go away. Well, they took all the rights to the characters with them. Well, why didn't somebody at DC go, no, wait a minute. You know what? As part of this deal, just give us the character. You're not going to use it anymore. We'll take it.
Yeah. They probably got more back in licensing fees than they paid for the...
Nobody thought about doing that. But when Captain Marvel went down back in the 50s, a lot of that writing talent went over to DC.
Yeah.
And did a lot of... That's where you get all of this great... The crazy whimsical stuff with Batman and Superman, the circuses and the kryptonite and is Robin dead on an alien planet type stories, all come from those guys that used to write Captain Marvel.
Now, I've got
or most of them at least.
One of my most prized comic book possessions that I've got in my collection is I've got a couple issues of Captain Marvel Jr. And you know, when you think of Captain Marvel, you always think of the C.C. Beck, Fred McMurray chin. Bless you. And
yeah, sorry, my throat goes dry.
But the Captain Marvel Juniors, on the other hand, the stuff that Mac Raboy was, or Mac Raboy, I don't know how to pronounce his name.
You're right.
Those covers were beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Those painted Captain Marvel Junior covers, and it's just always been a favorite character set of mine. Now
that whole company is fascinating to me because of some of the things that they did and stuff that they pulled as they went along. But you're right that when Captain Marvel started up and C.C. Beck came in, he came in off of a hardcore advertising career, and he realized the thing that sold comics was the bright colors, and open spaces. So he stripped his style down to just bare outlines and with lots of open spaces, very little shading. Hardly and very, if any, realism, dots for eyes, that kind of simplicity. And then Mac Raboy comes in and he gets Captain Marvel Jr. and he does exactly the opposite. Here's all these finely tuned, artistic looking, realistic drawings of Captain Marvel Jr. in flight and doing all of this amazing stuff. And they literally had both sides of the spectrum while they were printing those Captain Marvel characters.
Yeah,
it's really fascinating to think about and to look over because that, like you said, that Raboy stuff is amazing. Yeah,
I've got I don't know if it's the first time that Captain Marvel appeared in the DC universe, but it was his first appearance in that Justice League Crisis on Earth S crossover, that 3-part that they did.
Captain Marvel?
Yeah, remember when Superman and Shazam kind of went at the Rock of Eternity?
Honestly, I think Captain Marvel's first appearance was Shazam #1.
Okay.
That has this cover of Superman pulling back a curtain because that's what they used to do with the Fawcett books. And there's Billy Batson and Captain Marvel. So that's one of the first comics I bought as a kid because I wasn't allowed to have superheroes for most of my youth because my parents were very religious and they thought superheroes were too violent.
This is the second show I've been on tonight that the guy couldn't get comics because of his religious parents.
Mm-hmm. Well, my parents allowed me to have superheroes when they caught me with a Twilight Zone book. They had a guy like your anthology that was making a deal with the devil.
Yeah.
And they said, if you throw this demonistic book into the fire, we'll let you have superheroes. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Sold.
Sold. Yep. So my first books were Secret Origin #1, Legion of Superheroes, because I had never seen those characters before, #1, and Shazam #1.
Yeah, good stuff.
Oh yeah.
Talk about the nostalgia high I'm going to be on later tonight. I would love to go back.
I went back and found that Twilight Zone digest though. I've got a copy.
Well, I had plenty of I had tons of the superhero books, as I mentioned. Everything I was reading there.
Oh yeah.
But I was smart enough to know to keep that Warren Vampirella issue hidden somewhere safe.
Yeah, my first Warren magazine was the Spirit number 3 or 4.
Oh, nice.
Because I opened it up and I said, wow, the complete stories, just like what I'm doing here with Revolt. They complete stories, and there's 7 or 8 of them. And I was looking at them and going, this is really cool stuff. I've never seen this character before. I guess I'll buy it. And I've been a fan of Will Eisner's ever since. I've got all of the archives. I was lucky enough to meet him a couple times, got him to sign me a copy of his comics and sequential art book over to me, and a program that he was at, or the con program that we were both at. I got it signed over to me. Good luck with Arrow Comics, Will Eisner.
That's beautiful. That's one of the things I miss about the conventions.
Yeah,
is you can buy autographs online, but so what?
Not the same.
It's not the same thing. I've got the hardcover version of the greatest Batman stories ever told, and when I look at the inside of that, it's not that I'm like, I got signatures on here. No, I'm like, I remember talking with Dick Giordano and Denny O'Neil.
Yeah.
I remember meeting Jim Aparo. Yep. I remember turning a corner into one of the offshoot rooms of the Chicago Comic-Con in 1989, where nobody was in because it wasn't the main hallway. And I turn around, here's this huge, big painting of Alan Scott, Green Lantern. And I'm a kid. I'm like, oh, that's cool. That's like the Golden Age Green Lantern. And I look down and it's Shelley Moldoff and his wife at a folding table with nobody at it.
Yep.
And he signs my book. And I'm like, they're putting out the new Justice Society book right now. Why are you not writing it? Why are you not drawing it? And his wife leaned forward and said, tell them that.
Yeah. Tell them that.
So, and Dick Sprang, again, at a table by himself, nobody going up to him and but I met these people.
Yeah.
And you can't do that when you're not at a convention. I like talking with you, Randy. I have not met you yet.
Yeah.
I'm on a camera.
Mm-hmm.
And even without this COVID thing, the conventions, when I went to the Chicago convention, there were comic people there.
Yeah.
There was a DC booth.
I used to do all the Chicago cons until Wizard took them over.
Yeah. I was there in 88, 89.
I had my own table, my own spot at all the Chicago cons in the Marriott.
Yeah. And now
Titan's Tower.
I go to Wizard World in St. Louis because, I've got the table, I've got the Destroyer books. But, when I get up and I wander around, like, where are the publishers? They're not here. Oh, they don't come here. This is all just, it's a big flea market is what it is.
Yeah.
But, and then the access you had to the talent that was popular at the time. I tell the story when, I was in line for Peter David to get some signatures on some Hulks and his novelization for the Return of the Swamp Thing.
Yeah.
Which was far superior to the movie, which is faint praise, but the book was really, really good.
Yeah.
And there's a guy ahead of me, and I was like, and everybody in the line's grumbling because this guy ahead of me is with his father. He's in his, I want to say he's in his 20s, obviously developmentally challenged.
Okay.
So that's why his father's with him. Has a stack of Hulks as tall as the Sears Tower.
Oh boy. Yeah.
And we're like, yeah, we know where this is going. And by God, it stuck with me to this day that, he got up there and Peter David looked at the stack, took the first 5 books off that stack, signed them and put them to the side and took the next person in line and then took the next 5 books off that stack and signed them. And he didn't stop until every one of the damn books was signed. And I will praise Peter David to the day I die for having that kind of respect for the fans, people who buy his work.
Yeah.
He wasn't, looking at it like, the retailer is my end customer. Well, for the creators now, it's like the publisher is my end customer. Once the publisher's taken it, I don't give a shit anymore. He knew the whole chain of thing. It goes from me to you. These people are middlemen. If you're not buying it, they're not buying it, and he's not buying it, and I'm not selling it.
Yeah.
So, and that's my soapbox.
We all have them.
We all have them. Mine's still full. So, Randy, we better wrap it up, or we're gonna get on another rant. And we're doing pretty good here. But,
okay. Yeah.
And I won't give you a throat break, man. I know you need to rest it up there.
I can talk all day if I have enough coffee next to me or drink. Yeah.
Well,
I just have to catch it at the right time. I get talking too long is what it is with my open mouth that dries the throat out. So that's why you always see me on the podcast hitting the coffee.
Yeah, I have the same thing in the mornings. Let's get together and see if we can't get you on our March 27th Saturday LCS guys show. It's a 7:00 thing. Would love to have you on it. I think you'd be a great guest to have on there.
That's a Friday, Saturday. That's a Saturday.
Saturday at 7.
That day is the day I'm doing Pops's
CromCon.
Yeah.
Okay, you gonna be there all day?
I know, but I believe I am on from 8:30 until 9
Night.
at night, Eastern
Central.
time. Eastern time. Central, that'd be 7:30 to 8.
That cuts right into the middle of it. Okay, well, if that time changes,
sorry to tell you. And that'll be my first CromCon too, because I other than Indie Volt, I don't get out and around unless people invite me. So
well, we're going to change that right now, because anybody who's watched you tonight is going to want you on their show to talk about comics industry and comics history and promote this great anthology you've got here.
Yeah.
What's everybody saying? We still have publishers here in Pittsburgh at the Three Rivers Comic Con. Yes, they'll go to New York. They'll go to SDCC, and I'm going to neither. So
my last San Diego was 2003. I think that's when I talked to Bob Schreck about doing Batman.
It's too big, and it's too Hollywood.
Yeah, we had to step outside in order to talk. Yeah.
When I go to a comic book convention, I want to talk about comic books. I want to buy comic books and things related to comic books.
Yep.
I don't want to, get the latest Dukes of Hazzard movie star.
So I've thrown conventions, especially when I had the newspaper. I used to throw conventions in a farmer's market.
Oh,
because charge $5 to get in, 50 bucks a table, and we'd catch a lot of outside people walking by. What is all this? Well,
because it's outdoors.
Yeah, it's fine. Well, no, this was all inside, thankfully, but it's all like, well, it's $5 to get in, but there were so many people there. I did another one up in Saginaw 2 years ago, and we were going to do it again last year, but we were literally shoulder to shoulder at that show, and it's only a little one-day show and a very informal show in a banquet room. Yeah, literally shoulder to shoulder. The whole show. We had people coming in well into 2 p.m.
Those are the best ones.
Oh, it was an amazing show. Everybody made money. Everybody was happy, even though they were all bumping into one another. And, the temperature in the room was getting a little high, but it was a great time. Just an amazing time. Those are the best shows, though. The little one-day shows. That's what we all, us older folks, all cut our teeth on. Or the little 1 or 2 day, if we were lucky, 2-day shows, where you had a big dealer's room, but you also had some phenomenal guests to talk to.
Yeah, you had, we're going to have, George Perez is going to be sitting at a table talking at this one, and people would come just for him. And well, speaking of great times, I have had one talking with you tonight, Randy. I'm so glad you came on the show.
I appreciate you having me on. Really, it's fun.
This is not going to be the last time either.
Good,
folks in the chat, appreciate all you being through here. If you've gone out and backed Revolt, thank you very much. If you haven't, what are you waiting on?
M3SOZ is there. Hey. Hi,
man.
Oh,
yeah, we have a lot of people. We have 24 backers, Randy. 24 backers.
There we go. Awesome.
We just need
one more and that Mark Darden story gets in. It's a good story, too. And that'll be over 120. Yeah, Guano Guy. Over 120 pages, then that book becomes. One more backer.
Yes. This is a huge book for the price. So
yes.
Jay Lee, I hope the stream didn't crash. He's chatting. I can hear you. You can hear me. We're conversing, and I'm clicking on.
Your live ticker is still going on in the corner in StreamYard, so we got to be going on somewhere. So
I think something went wrong with your internet, James. So anyhow,
well, sorry if it did, but we hope it did. We hope it was just you.
Yeah,
not to sound mean.
It's not us. It's you. It's you, James.
Yeah.
All right. Everyone in the chat, if you haven't gone out and hit this yet, you need to. This is the biggest bang for your buck you're going to get. You have Biden bucks in your pocket right now. I know you do.
Read the description in the campaign. You'll see all sorts of different types of stories done by all sorts of different types of people. From we've got a one from the Netherlands, 2 from Great Britain. Most of them's here in the States, but it's all phenomenal reading. It's all great stuff. Really.
All great stuff. So, Randy, thank you. Everyone in the chat, thanks for showing up. We don't have a show if you don't come here and watch it. And